I only know very little of it. Because Indian Institute of Science was born more than 100 years ago. It's actually 110 years ago. And the planning actually started even before that. But what I'll do is I'll just give some idea about what I think is what are the strengths of Indian Institute of Science. And of course, it's free to interpretation and it can be contested. As Manoj was telling that right now Indian Institute of Science is ranked 2 now in some ranking. And therefore, all these things can be contested and just take it with your own wisdom. But I'm going to actually try to give you some glimpse of what I think that why Indian Institute of Science actually has reached some landmark. Okay, and excellence is something that is defined by individuals and everybody has their own idea of excellence. But then there are some common themes that comes out of it. Now this building is the iconic building of Indian Institute of Science, and this was the first building that was built when Indian Institute of Science was built. Now the first director of Indian Institute of Science was a Britisher named Dr. Maurice Travers. In fact, in his first 5 years, this building was not ready. The building was sort of built up to the plinth level, and then he had to leave. He had to leave for reasons that I'll tell you another day, but he had to leave. But when he was leaving and he was taking this horse cart ride from Indian Institute of Science to the Bangalore railway station, in those days, remember, there was no flights to actually take from Bangalore and so on. This is about around 1911. So he was writing that in his diary, which is still kept in the Indian Institute of Science, saying that this building is getting ready, and I hope that there'll be an institution like what I've seen in England of that type here one day, and this building will actually be the signature of it. But he didn't actually complete the building. But it has become the signature of Indian Institute of Science, because wherever you see Indian Institute of Science, you see this building. So this is the building that was built, and then it was established in 1909 formally, because that's the year it started, and it started because of one of the greatest visionary, I believe, of this country, Mr. Jamshedji Tata. And he had a great vision, and his vision was held by, of course, talking to lots of other people, but he intrinsically, he traveled to the West and he decided that he wanted to build things that he has seen in the West, in India. And he thought that for development, that you need 3 things. And one is that you need steel, because without steel you cannot build highways, you cannot build bridges, you cannot connect places and so on. You need electricity to drive the industry, including the steel production. And you need an institution which will provide the know-how for all those and develop education in this country. So in his will, when he died, he had 3 institutions in mind. And he hasn't seen actually any of them being successful at that time, because he died early. But he left in his will that these 3 institutions must be built. And those 3 institutions are all shining today. Now I'll tell you that, of course, you need to know which one is the steel one. That's nearby. The Jamshedpur, Tata Steel Company. Indian Institute of Science is that institution that he wanted to build. And he was actually sort of given this idea by Swami Vivekananda when they were actually traveling together in a ship from the West. And he is the man, the Padshah, he was the one who represented him, the representative of Tata Trust at that time, to build the institution. And this, of course, is Maurice Travers, who was the first director who started building Indian Institute of Science. But what is the third one? I have not told you what is the third one that Tata actually envisaged to build and which is shining today. No, I said that he needed electricity. So the Tata Electric Company in Maharashtra, actually, which powers half of Maharashtra. So these are the 3 institutions that he actually envisioned to build, which is now today there. And they are all excellent institutions. And of course now that Tata Trust, which actually runs about 123 companies, and all of them are good in their own way, including TCS and other names you know. So that's why I call him one of the greatest visionary of this country. because we haven't really produced that kind of vision since then. So this is the Maharaja of Mysore who actually provided the land free of cost. So it was actually the best public-private partnership that started this institution. You can see that this is private, this is public, the government of India who actually decided to build this at the behest of Tata, and this is also private. The Maharaja of Mysore decided to give the land, and which is where it is today. Okay, and he gave it free of cost. And so it started as higher education and research in science and engineering. The first two departments were chemistry, and now of course the chemistry has grown as a division, as you will see later, and electrotechnology. So it started with both science and technology, even in the beginning. Okay? And the first batch of students were admitted in 1911, and that's important because 100 years later, when we were celebrating our centenary year, we were asking these questions in a 2-year debate through many Senate meetings and many heated meetings, that whether Indian Institute of Science can still do only research in science and engineering, or it has to actually get part into the education system heavily. And so finally it was decided that we should start an undergraduate program, because in the next 100 years we believe the undergraduate program will actually show the results, and Indian Institute of Science will then be a complete institution with both undergraduate and postgraduate studies. So 2011 was when the first batch of undergraduate students came in. Until then, the first 100 years there were no undergraduates. It was a postgraduate institute, mainly emphasizing on research. Now what I'm going to give you just some brief overview of Indian Institute of Science, how the funding about Indian Institute of Science, entrepreneurship and industry involvement of Indian Institute of Science, and academic initiatives and outreach. Now, of course, there are many other things that I'll not cover about Indian Institute of Science. As you see, it's a 110 years history, and it's very difficult to cover everything in half an hour. So what I'll do is, now I'll tell you that what is IISc today. Now, these are just numbers. So we have 42 departments and centers and units. We call all of them like that because when something new starts, it starts as a center. And then eventually when it grows in size, it qualifies for a department, then it runs its own academic program, it takes its own students and so on. The centers are just sort of conglomerate of people and facilities. Okay? So that's how it actually develops. Now we have, right now, 507 sort of faculty. We can call them broadly faculty. Some of them are actually scientific staff, but including them in 507. Now we also have support services. Now our staff for official work is less than 507 today. So we have actually brought it down over a period of time, and now is a time maybe we have to recruit some more people. So we have about 450 working staff in Indian Institute of Science for 507 faculty. Now this is very important in today's context. I'm sure that people who are sitting in the front are actually smiling. They know why it is important. But so we have about 4,000 plus students. Now most students are actually PhD students. It's still at the core of Indian Institute of Science is still a research institute. Although we have students, okay, we have master students, we have undergraduates. The undergraduate students, number of undergraduate students are very small. It's about, for each year we take about 110 undergraduate students. So it's over a 4-year period is only 440. Now, the reason that we cannot grow forever is that because the land that we have got in those days from Maharaja is not sufficient to grow further. But we have some other plans I'll show you in due course. And then of course we actually have about 2,000 publications roughly per year. Okay, so that's number. Now we have actually 6 divisions, 3 in sciences and 3 in engineering. So it's very, in fact, if you see the number of actually faculty members in engineering faculty is much more than in the science faculty. And this is something that is not known to the outside, because since we are named as Indian Institute of Science, we tend to believe that we have more faculty members in science departments than engineering. That is not true. All the numbers are given in this. They're all color-coded. You can read them. Now, for the students, as I said, that most of the students are PhD students or integrated PhD students. That's about 2,600, 2,700. Now, we have also some master students. These are all MTech, ME students, and they are about 640. And actually this morning, my colleagues from IIT Bombay were telling they have a huge number of master students, 3 times than this. So of course, you know, they're much bigger in size than ours. So, and we have very few undergraduates and other students. So now, this is another way of actually, so now under each broad divisions, okay, these 6 divisions are there. These are the different departments and centers that belong to mechanical sciences. Okay. Now, this is physical and mathematical sciences. There are basically 6 departments and centers. Now, in chemical sciences, which I am heading right now, there are 5 departments: inorganic and physical chemistry, solid state and structural chemistry, materials research center, organic chemistry department, and NMR research center. So these 5 is in the chemical sciences. It's actually chemical sciences is one of the smallest division, but perhaps it's one of the best in Indian science. In fact, in the Hong Kong ranking, ARWU ranking, okay, the chemical sciences division were maintaining actually a position below 75 for a long time. Okay, so it's one of the top, I would say, about 50, 60 departments in the world. Okay, now, so this is actually, so this lists all the departments that there are. There are some departments which are old, like those names you know, and some actually have been added in the last 5 years or so. For example, we have a department of earth sciences. We have a department of atmospheric and oceanic sciences. We have a department for infrastructure, sustainable transportation, and urban planning. Okay, we have a water research cell. We have a cyber physical systems laboratory. Okay, so all these are all new, because what happens is that as time goes by, certain subjects become important, and then in the institute, many people think that that should be there, and finally that is there. That's how actually the institute grows. Okay, so now what is important actually in order for excellence, okay, is that the quality of faculty, staff, and students are very important in order to reach any kind of excellence in any institutions in the world. Now, so therefore, we are very careful about actually how we recruit our faculty members, how we take our students, and how we actually select the staff that we are going to select. I'll just briefly mention how we do this. Of course, what is also important is quality of the work environment. So we all try very hard all the time to make the best work environment possible so that people feel comfortable, people feel at ease, and then try to reach excellence in their own way. And of course, overall quality of the life in our campus. That's what actually we also spend a lot of money and time to think about that. So these 3 things actually are the main pillars for achieving excellence. Now I'll mention first a little bit about how the faculties are actually viewed by the Indian Institute of Science. Now, in order to actually recruit a faculty, first the faculty member has to visit and interact with the existing faculty members, and then there will be, once they are actually impressed, they make a recommendation, then it goes to a selection process like everywhere else, and then we give them a general startup grant. We give them a general startup grant, and that startup grant is at the moment per faculty. In fact, in the last 5 years, I would say, since I have been actually seeing all these numbers, it's about 1.5 crores on an average, which is pretty high in our country standard. Now that's what we actually give. And then we ask hard questions. We ask a 1-year report. That's when their probation is closed. Then we actually get a 3-year report and give them a feedback, how they are doing in terms of starting their career in India. And that feedback is very harsh. And you have to believe my word that actually we detail out what are the things that they should do, what we expect from them, and how they are going to excel in this country. And if there is any problem, they can always actually approach any of the divisional chairs who run basically all the faculty affairs. Okay? And then there is a 5-year report. At that time, actually, this is much more serious because then the department makes a recommendation about the faculty, how the faculty is doing. The first 5-year contract is going to be over, and the contract is now going to be renewed for only 3 years. And in 6.5 years, they'll be put through a evaluation. And that evaluation is like all institutions in the world. It's an external evaluation. The internal people only have one recommendation letter in that. And actually we write to 8 to 10 people all over the world, including in India. And typically 50% from India and 50% from abroad. But this is not so strict. But with those 8 recommendation letters and the departmental recommendation, the paper is put in front of an external, we call them a promotion and assessment committee, which is an external committee, which is chaired by the chairman of the council. And that committee decides by looking at the letters and looking at the performance and looking at the departmental recommendation whether the person should be promoted or not. And now we have this tenure system that if the person is not promoted within 6.5 years, he gets another 1.5 years and he has to find an alternate job. Now this is very strict. And this came with the fact that we give generous startup grants. Okay, that's what, so what we do is therefore, we do a very strict monitoring of the faculty's initiative. Because once they are promoted, then they are in the permanent category. And then, of course, we have to live with them for the next 30 years or so. So we are careful actually for that selection. Now about the staff, I'm not going to say, but what about the staff that we do, we actually have a HR who actually interacts with the staff after they go through a written test and so on, and then recommend among the ones that are shortlisted, who are the ones to be hired. So we have actually an HR consultant who is hired for just selecting staff, just talking to them like it's done in the corporate sector. So we are actually bringing a lot of changes in Indian society. This is one of the changes that we have actually made in recent times. Now, world-class facilities, that of course we have computational facility, but then as Professor Manoj Mesra just told me that IIT Bombay is #1 in competition. so that may be true. That may be true. So we have a tough competition ahead. That's what I meant to say. But now there are some of these facilities which are actually world-class. And if you have world-class people with world-class facilities and a world-class environment, then only you can build institutions that are world-class, and that's what we do. So we have all these various facilities. Each of them cost a lot of money. But sometimes the money comes from outside sources, sometimes it comes from our internal resources, and so on. Now, because we are actually pretty much saturated, and we cannot grow any further in the existing campus, about 2008, so it's about 10 years ago, the government of Karnataka actually gave us some land, which we of course purchased, okay, about 1,500 acres, which is about 3 hours drive from the campus of Indian Science. And so this, we call it Challakere campus. We are developing that campus for various projects that we cannot actually implement in our new campus. Some of the projects are actually, which needs a lot of space and also needs sort of open area. For example, we have a huge solar energy project which you cannot actually do in the campus, existing campus. So that solar energy project is taken there. There is a actually wind tunnel project that the defense and airlines industries are interested. That will be taken there. So we actually select what are the type of things that has to be taken there, because there's a lot of land and coming from institution. Some of the funding is coming from MHRD and so on. Now, we also have, like for example, this is the actually main gate of that campus, which has been developed now. So the campus has been secured now. This is the entry of that 1,500 acre land that has been given. And right now, all these things are there in that campus, but there will be more things in the future. There are lots of plans. Hybrids, yeah. So this is actually the resources. So this is about amount in rupees crores that actually we have. So we get about 500 crores from the government directly for salaries and other regular expenses. 300 crores comes from the faculty grants, and 102 actually that comes from non-government research grants. So there are lots of various philanthropists who have actually invested heavily in our campus. I'll not have all the details in this presentation, but typically what happens is that we have 50% of the funding comes from the government, 35% comes from the investigators through research grants, and 15% is from other resources. Now what we are trying to do right now is to actually increase these and bring down both of these. That's actually our eventual aim, and we'll have to see what we can do in the next few years. So so now we also have a Society for Innovation and Development, which is Section 25A company, which is actually is a company run by the Indian Institute of Science, where all innovation and development work is taken up by them, including consultancy. Okay. And this is very important because there are a large number of players like Pratt & Whitney, Boeing, General Motors, DHL, Tata Trust, and all these Microsoft, FMC. They all actually have huge projects running under SID with faculty members from the Indian Institute of Science. And actually, this sort of generates a lot of revenue also, other than just research money for us. Okay? So this is very important, and we have about 550 R&D projects with 200 companies across the globe. Okay? And we also have corporate research grants, and which is important for us. Now we also actually value innovation very much, so we incubate startup companies, and finally some of them actually have now become a successful company. For example, the Tata Trust is developing this PathSo, which is basically a diabetes care diagnostic tool, and this Tata Trust is going to take it to various rural areas of India, and that's apparently running very successfully. And the person who actually developed that, who actually got the Infosys award this year, Professor Navakant Bhatt. Okay, so and he was given the Infosys award because he developed that and brought it to the market through the startup trust. Okay, so there are lots of other such things that goes on. And okay, so now of course there are lots of academic initiatives. We have new interdisciplinary research division that is being started. It will be a new building. It has not happened yet, but it's a 75 crore building that is planned, where there will be lots of new initiatives, okay, of interdisciplinary nature will be hosted. And we have, of course, faculty development, career development. We have endowed chairs and young investigators positions. These are actually given to faculty members for encouraging them for doing better and better. And these all come from private sources. And then, of course, we also have, every 5 years, we have international reviews of various departments and centers and so on. So that actually tells us that what is lacking in Indian Institute of Science that is there, let's say, in Stanford or in University of Illinois or Champaign or whatever you name. So that is very important because we get lots of good feedbacks. For example, in a recent review, they said that we don't travel internationally very much and present our data. So now in the institute, we have created 300 international travel fellowships by faculty and students every year. So it's just, so whatever feedback is actually received, we act on that. And that's how we try to always make it a much and much better place. And I'm almost there. And then of course, we have now the Institute of Eminence. And under Institute of Eminence, we are actually trying to do these things much more, that exchange faculty and students, okay, with various other A-grade institutions in the world. And we are thinking of giving joint degrees, but that has not happened yet. It may happen. And then we also have lots of outreach programs. Teachers training is one of them. We have Madan Mohan Malaviya Teachers Training Center funded by MHRD, but we have Karnataka State Council and Science Technology has been running this program and giving us generous money, which is done actually in the new campus now. Okay, so many teachers, school teachers in Karnataka in science has been trained. Okay, and then therefore lots of other things. We are actually very big on climate change and so on. We have various collaborations with various countries. There are sometimes bilateral, sometimes trilateral collaborations. And finally, I thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, you are free to ask, and I'll try to answer as much as I can. Okay, thank you very much.